doing our intros here because we have two very special guests who joined us on this away day that we had. Um, but first, I'm going to get to this week's returning champion, uh, the man in the suit, the 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 counselor, if you will, our friend Will S. Preston Esquire. How are you?
I'm great. They call me the Kid Fighter now too, so
Kid fighter, kid fighter.
add it to the repertoire. So
There's nothing quite like it. There's nothing quite like. I hope you've recovered from the knockdown drag out fight you had with the children and
my
and
feelings, they're hurt, but my body will carry on. So
very
we'll be
good,
okay.
very good. That's great. Next up, we have Will's best friend, his confidant, his other half, Jimmy.
Tom.
He's the man. He's the man in front. He's got 1,000 references. He makes it fun for the Green Mountain Boys up front, and he makes me laugh at least 8 to 10 times every single match. How you doing today, Jimmy?
I'm doing good. Like Will said, recovering sticks and stones. They break my bones, but throwing slushies will never hurt me. So let the kids throw their drinks.
There we go. There we go. You know what? That's the best intro that we've ever had on this podcast. I know we're not many episodes in; we're only a couple seasons in, but that's fine. And then to my right, in my upper right hand corner, we have. I know we've called Brian McLaughlin the voice of Vermont Green, but this is the real voice of the Vermont Green. This is the guy in the stadium who comes up with probably the best player intros I've ever heard. He's got some great commentary. He's got the voice. He's got the knowledge. He's got everything, and he's handsome as hell. Despite being a United fan, but that's fine. He's from there. He can be. Tom Proctor, how are you doing today, Tom?
Good, melting right now. Can you hear me at all?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I didn't really get a response there, but yeah, I'm good. Hot.
Yeah, it is.
I'm very well. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, always, man. For anybody who doesn't know, or if you're listening in or you're watching from elsewhere, it is 137 degrees Fahrenheit here in Vermont, and I have retreated to the basement where I usually record, and it's usually nice and cool, but it is actually cooler upstairs where I have 17 air conditioners going all at once. So, but all that said, let's get into a little bit of the action, because we had a match where we ventured down to Western Mass, to Ludlow, Massachusetts, to watch our beloved Vermont Green play a football match versus what were at the time the number 2 ranked team in the country, Western Mass Pioneers, just behind the other team in our division, Sea Boats United. So let's talk about the implications going into the game. And I'm going to go to Will first, because there was a lot on the line here for our club not having made the playoffs the previous season. So why don't you take us into that, Will, and what kind of drove not just us but the rest of the Green Mountain Boys to come down and show support?
Yeah, it was an important game because we were supposed to have a game on Wednesday that got canceled due to the rain. So, we had lost an opportunity to pick up some points, and so we were left in a situation where if we didn't theoretically beat Western Mass, we would be going home. And so, really this game was the affirmative opportunity to, make the playoffs. And so, we decided to get on down there and, help improve the atmosphere. And, I'm sure we'll get into it. But it was absolutely worth going. Lusitano was a real experience. So, while ironically it didn't matter in the end because Motown lost and we would have made the playoffs regardless, I still think it was great.
They drew, yeah.
they drew. It was still great to get down there and support the team and see that win come. So it was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Jimmy, what was your experience like going, not just going down, but like the pregame experience, the experience when you got to the place? What were your first thoughts outside of the match, in fact?
Yeah, initial impressions were that the ticketing windows were entirely too low to the ground. So I did smack my head on their concrete wall when I got my tickets. But as one of the fine gentlemen in the Lusitania Club said, Portuguese people used to be much smaller, hence the lower windows. But yeah, honestly, I was shocked. I had heard really good things about the grounds, the historic nature of it, and how big it is in the community. And yeah, I was really just impressed. The club across the street was fantastic, surprisingly welcoming. Wasn't really sure what to expect, showing up wearing the opposing team's kit. And yeah, everybody inside the club was great. And then walking into the stadium itself, like the concession stand was really well run. They had their announcer who was doing a great job calling, stuff for the Pioneers. And yeah, everybody on one side of the field was very nice and very welcoming. So yeah, it was pleasantly surprising.
Yeah, we'll get into those comments later, but Tom traveled down there with me last year for this fixture, and we had regaled the Bahoys with stories of how great this place was and how welcoming it was. And I don't think, for me, it didn't necessarily disappoint. Again, there was a bit more on the line this time. But Tom, what were your impressions? Were they the same going down? Were they different? What were you apprehensive about going at all?
I was only apprehensive in the sense that Western Mass are a top quality side, and it's Lusitania Stadium is a difficult place to go to and get anything from.
Yeah, they don't lose there.
No, and I believe that they've only lost twice in God knows how many years, and both of them to Seacoast the last 2 seasons, which obviously one of the best teams in the country. So going down there, the only fear really was the game itself. My impression of it last year was just fantastic. I mean, the vibe of that place is brilliant. Built by immigrants like 100 years ago. It's held some fantastic matches. It's a real community hub, it seems. It's got a fantastic social club across the road from the stadium, where they were playing women's roller hockey.
Yeah,
the Benfica team has a women's roller hockey team, and they had that on the TV, which is possibly the most obscure sports I've seen, other than maybe Little League softball in an airport once. So yeah, the ground itself is brilliant, and up until the second half of this game, the impressions of every fan I've ever met of West Ham have also been very good. Somewhat tainted now, but I will say anyone over the age of 18, apart from that one specific gentleman who supports West Ham Mass, seems to be fairly nice. It's just a next generation, or a little, should we say, uncouth.
Yeah, for sure. So before we get into that again, let's talk about lineups a little bit. There were some surprises for me coming to this. I expected Xavi to be there, starting. He was not on the team bus. He wasn't selected in the squad. I don't know why. I'm hoping it's not that there was an injury or anything like that. Hopefully it was a coach's tactical thought going into the game. It seemed that we brought some more defenders, we brought some more midfielders, and fewer spot on attackers to start this game. We got to see the return of Drexler, who is one of my favorites, not just as a player, but as a person. I think he's a great young man, and I think that if and when he comes back next year, he's going to be a huge contributor to this team. I think he's learning the ropes here, and It's great to see him back. But we kind of expected to see some of the players that were there. We expected to see the Zach Zenge. We expected to see Yaniv Bazzini starting, to see Rodri starting, and Musa and Reed. Were there any surprises for you at all, Will, in that?
I was surprised. I've been mentioning lately that I think Gabe Threadgold has been really great, on the attacking front line. We didn't see him in the roster, and he wasn't even, on the bench. So whether that, again, is a knock, whether it's school considerations, we don't really know. Kind of is the nature of USL 2, though, to just be flexible with who's in the match day squad every week. But, I think the surprise was Nick Lockerman starting. We haven't seen a ton of him, throughout the season. I think he's mainly come on as a sub or in friendlies. But, I definitely think he put in a big shift there, without, Threadgold, without O'Neill. So
Will's cat just made him disappear.
Every time the cat appears.
Every episode.
Yeah, but the exciting thing was that I thought gave us a chance to start is that box, Rodri, Leighton, and Dye and Fisher. I think that defense is particularly strong against a team like Western Mass away. I think you need that solidity, and the first half was really stop-start, but I think that defensive unit kept us in it. In some really touch and go moments. So, because Western Mass is a big team and they knock it down. So, it was important to be strong and be physical. And we found success in that. I mean, the first half was very stop-start. I mean, the nature of it, is fights being broken up, players down with injury. There wasn't a lot of rhythm to be had, but I think that defensive unit stopped us from potentially getting sucker punched in the stop-start nature of the first half. So I thought it was massive.
Yeah, Tom. So you get to generally see from a higher perspective. You're kind of like our bird's eye kind of guy, and we because we're right on the field. We're watching the action on the field now. With your perspective, like, were any of these players that we saw in that opening in the opening half a surprise for you? Was there anybody surprising, or was there anybody that you expected to see, given the nature of the game or the opponent itself?
Well, I think as Will said, with these USL 2 teams, every lineup is always going to be maybe a little bit flexible. You're not ever going to be able to have maybe your strongest 11 coming out, so no one's really ever a surprise. I will say that I've been a big fan of Twali since he's played for us, maybe because I just wanted to see him do a backflip again, but I did at least expect him to be on the bench. I think, as you mentioned, there was other omissions as well, like Javi O'Neill. Great name, just want to shout that out. Irish and Spanish all in one. It's that time of year, though, in the USL 2 league, where you do get players starting to get called back to their universities again. And I wonder whether or not that might be what happened there. I haven't heard anything from the boys that run the club, but I do know that there is going to be, for example, maybe some omissions going forward, even in the next game on Tuesday. There's a player that's not going to be starting because I think he's going to be called back, and that's going to be a huge loss. I think it's Benny Prego, so we won't be seeing him on Tuesday. And so I do wonder if that was the reason why we didn't see some of these players that have been a bit more consistently starting for us. As for the team sheet, I feel like we played the strongest 11 that we had available to us.
Yeah. And having we've talked about it a lot, right? This season, and amongst the Green Mountain Boys and amongst the folks on this podcast. But Jimmy, like, we have such a huge team this year, a huge squad, a lot of players to choose from, that having the knowledge that a lot of these guys are going to be picked up by possibly MLS2 teams or teams in the higher leagues, late season, mid season. What was your look at that at the lineup I think that we've kind of talked a little bit extensively about it, but like, if you have a different perspective, what were your thoughts like looking at it?
I think it's a lot of, echoing what you guys have said. And obviously in previous seasons, we've seen people, have to go back to college or get called up to other teams. And there is that, like, who's up, who's going to fill this role. Whereas this season, do have almost seems like a deeper roster that allows for more of that kind of plug and play. And then this season in particular, compared to last season, you can rely a lot more on the defense. You're not needing to put up, 3, 4, 5 goals to really stay ahead of the opponent. So obviously, having Reed and Moose there defending is always nice to be able to rely on. And then just seeing what the rest of the team can do from like a possession domination standpoint to create those chances. It's kind of interesting because each game with different people starting up front, you can kind of see like what their version of football looks like. While still relying on that kind of solid wall in the back. So, there's some of the people that you expect to see and you don't, but it kind of keeps it fresh, which is nice when you still get the result that you want.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, getting through the lineups. Let's start talking about this game because Will had mentioned very start stoppy first half. There's a lot of it's kind of like the two Rams, just butting heads, seeing who's going to get the upper hand and who's going to get to stay on the top of that mountain, right? At least for this match, because everybody knows that Social Media FC is only there for the looks, right? We're not there to challenge for anything. So I think that like going into this game, a lot of these players who have been with us previous seasons have made it known to the other players, maybe the newer players, that this is a game that is important to the fans. It's important to not just the fans, but it's important to the club and to the future of the club and how we progress and move into the future. That it's imperative that they not just go out there and not back down, but to put out a good performance on the field, because we're a fan base and sure, we don't have a history like Sea Squirrels or like the Wimp, Western Mass Pioneers. We don't have the history that they have, but what we are doing is building this history, right? We're building this history, and it's like it's almost paint by numbers. We're filling in the colors where we can, and with the players that we can. So Will, kind of take me through the first half, because like I said, these guys are butting heads and no one wants to give an inch, but at the same time you can feel kind of the desperation of some of our players, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest example there is that, Zenge goes for a scissor kick in the 45th minute and comes away with a yellow card. Somehow, we stopped play for like 3 to 4 minutes on that, and we had to stop it at 31 with another injury. And the half ended immediately. It was an amped up team on both sides. I think that everybody was running hot that game. I think Western Mass are, they play from a position of strength and aggressive, and I think we matched that intensity. And so, I was worried heading into the halftime because we've seen this play out before with these bigger teams. We've seen us come up short when these sort of clashes happen. So, the fact that it didn't go that way, I thought this was a statement win for the Vermont Green. And honestly, because we were at the away stadium under siege, this game's going to live long in the memory for sure.
Tom, they're a team that like they don't play like Seafoam, right? They don't play that kind of dump and chase, low block and counter, but they don't have those small, fast wingers, right? That are gonna just scoot up the wings and try and beat our wing backs, right? They don't have they don't have that striker that's gonna receive the ball in the middle of the field and drop it off to one of those streaking wingers. They have big, strong players, so they still kind of play that kind of. It's kind of more like a mid-low block, right? Where they will sit back, they'll absorb a little pressure, but they're not going to back down, and then they're going to come forward. They're going to push forward at you. Talk to us a little bit about how that might play to the strength of Vermont Green or to the detriment of Vermont Green.
Well, as you said, they're a very physical side, so which I don't think is quite the case with Seacoast, not as much anyway. I think as a physical side, they're matching up against. I think if this was the team of last year or the year before, I think that would have overwhelmed us. I think this year we have got a lot larger as a team, and you see that with Lockerman, Reed Fisher, who is 7'5" or something crazy, Musa and Dai. Absolutely mad. And obviously, we've always had Moose, but he was more of an exception than a rule.
Right.
So I do think we've got a lot more physical this time. Bezzini's a big lad for a striker, He's not Lukaku or anything, but he's still a physical big guy. So I think that kind of physicality was actually good for us. I think the downside to that, and this is Seacoast do this as well, is Western Mass know how to rile us up, as do Seacoast. Seacoast are the absolute masters of it. Ultimately, Western Mass weren't playing for anything other than pride on the weekend. We needed the 3 points. They could and did lose and still be in the playoffs. And I think we meet that physicality with a physicality, but also kind of a passion and a rage as well. And I think that's where we start becoming unstuck. And we've seen this before early in the season, where if we've gone behind, sometimes we don't have that mentality to be able to get out of the ditch, so to speak. So I think that's where that physicality can sometimes kind of leave us a little bit unstuck.
Yeah, totally. I'm sorry. I'm distracted. I'm distracted by the fact that Jimmy is gone, and Will is here now. Okay, that's good.
I've been here, brother.
Okay.
He's just still.
Jimmy is still. So I'm distracted by that. But you're absolutely right, Tom. Teams like this, they do know how to rile us up. They want to rile us up because, again, and it's obviously it's a false narrative to say that we're a social media FC. We're just trying to do it. We're trying to do it any way we can, right? In this league, but so we go in 0-0 and a half. We've been bumping up against each other all night long. We're not backing down an inch. Neither are they. They come out. They have an injury immediately to their superstar, Alec Hughes, who amazingly had been shut down for that entire first half. He got shut down so terribly by Reed Fisher and Musa that he had maybe one or two touches that I can remember.
But that's because we were playing an away style game. There was no space for him to get in on our center backs because they were back most of the time. The problem that we've seen at Seacoast twice, both at the away game and the home fixture specifically, was that we went too far into a protagonist style. We've got our center backs at the halfway line, and they get done by Dos Santos running straight at them. In this game, while we played a physical, tough style, I think there was also some more conservatism in the way we defended that I really felt has been missing in previous games. And yes, we let up the first goal, but I mean, Western Mass, Alec Hughes or not, they score goals. They score goals. And the fact that we held them to 1 at home, I thought it was a much better way that we defended and the transition in midfield to attack was much better. Sometimes I feel like that unit moves too far forward, and we've been caught out by the better teams. We didn't do that in this game, and it made a lot of a difference, in my opinion.
No, Tom, do you think that's a tactical switch by the coaching staff, by Adam Pfeiffer and the coaching staff, or do you think that's like, is it it probably is a tactical switch, but is it a tactical switch because we were playing a team like Western Mass, or was it a tactical switch because they tried something that didn't work previously with the Sea Monkeys?
Yeah, I think Seacoast probably taught us a few lessons, and it would have been foolish to go into this game without tweaking some of the tactics. I think it's difficult to say though, because at one, we don't know why some of those players that we've seen often starting weren't even on the bench with Western Mass. So at some time it might have been a case of we're going to have to play with what we've got, and that's going to be that kind of style, kind of. And then another part is this was a do or die match for us, and I think that changes the way that players play as well. I know Seacoast, it obviously was incredibly important that game, but with 2,500 people there, you feel that maybe, and getting all riled up, as I previously said, I think they lost their heads in that game, and I think this game going into it, I think they were a little bit more savvy about.
Savvy, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that might have been the difference maker. But yeah,
Now, Jimmy, I'm glad you're back. I'm glad you're fixing your shitty internet situation there.
It's not an internet situation. This is fully on my laptop, which has not been used in a year. So went with the old turn it off, turn it back on approach.
Okay. Well, you're 93% uploaded, which is better than Tyson usually is, which is we're spot on. So that's great. Riverside is great when it's great, and it's bad when it's bad. But I think it's great right now. So we're talking about the second half here. We're talking about the tactical switch to actually play our center backs in center back positions rather than to push up and play a higher line, hoping to score goals and attack. Now, tactically, that helped. Alec Hughes got hurt. Golden Boot winner off the field. That's good for everyone that's wearing green, right? So at this point, we as fans are thinking, shit, now we have the advantage. They go and they score a goal. They punch us right in the mouth, like almost immediately. And like Will said, they score fucking goals. They do. They score a lot of goals, and they don't give up goals, and they definitely don't give up goals at home. At that point, they score that goal. What are you thinking as a fan in the stands? Because we are pushed over to the other side of the field to help our coaches get instructions on to the players on the field, right? So we're pushed to the other side of the stands, on the other side of the field as fans. What are you thinking at this point? Because we're getting barraged by their fans on the other side, who are preteens and some adults. They score. Yeah, what happens?
I think even in a situation where we weren't getting, berated by a select few of their fans, it was very much we've seen this movie before, and you hate to see it, but I do feel like there's a lot of times where we bring energy as fans. The team is out there giving it their all, but when they give up that goal and now they're playing down, sometimes the wheels fall off the wagon. And I feel like, there was kind of just that deflation that settled a little bit. A couple of the boys were trying to get us back up. I know Ryan did a great job, trying to get the energy back. And then I would just say, was super proud of the team and how quickly they did respond. Because, it definitely had the potential to be a long remainder of the second half after we went down 1-0, and the fact that we were able to respond, within minutes, was great to see. kind of the team rally and push and get a goal, but then also great to kind of rebalance the energy on the side of the stands that we were in, because I don't think any of us wanted to endure some of what was being said for another 20 or 30 minutes.
Yeah, shit, dude. Like that was that was a thing. Is like we as fans on the other side now. I went up to the very top with the megaphone. You guys stayed down at the rail. I didn't. I was hanging out with some folks up there. Me and Tyler were hanging out up there.
Smart move. You were out there on the fire.
I just didn't want to. I wanted to make sure that my my one Vermont Green kit that actually fits me properly didn't get slushied. But
Fair.
we go down and then come back immediately, and we talked about it in the car, right, on the way home. It felt like an eternity. In reality, it was 3 minutes.
It was 3 minutes, and
it was 3 minutes. It felt like an eternity, probably because their fan base, they rose up, they bloomed a little bit. The sun came out for them. Something happened. So then, next thing you know, top corner of the box, Castillo, banger. Will, what are you thinking at that point?
bedlam. I mean,
Bedlam.
just in our little group of fans, I think we all turned around and started yelling at those kids. Honestly, I don't know. That's what I remember. So, they were talking about.
I came down. I tried to stop you guys from yelling at the kids by giving hugs out, and I know that Will gave me the biggest hug that I've ever received around my head, and nearly crushed my glasses and broke my glasses. It was a Virtue Field style bedlam that happened, in the boys section there. Everybody was going crazy. Fans that were still on the other side of the field in the main stand were going crazy. It was insane, and it was as loud as I've heard a roar from the crowd. Maybe all season.
Well, I mean, that is the season. I mean, we're down a goal in the 69th minute. We're going home with nothing. And Castillo, Mr. Reliable, started most every game. Very quietly good left back, leathers it out of nowhere. It was a moment out of nowhere.
Right.
Because the tide was fully turned at that point. It was fantastic.
That's the inflection point, right, in the game where everything turns. And I think to a man on the field, you could see the way that they, immediately got that confidence and said, holy shit, we can do this now. Because from that next kickoff on, they don't have their golden boot winner there. They're taking players off the field. They knew at that moment that we tied that game, that, okay, we're going to start taking players off the field because we can't go through this and risk injury, risk cards, risk all of this. It's going to be an issue. Tom, what were you thinking at that moment, and where did we go from here that actually made a difference?
Difficult to say, because at that moment I was in dreamland. We were kids chirping next to us. Obviously, we just scored the goal. I'm absolutely elated. It just felt, as you said, kind of like it was a watershed moment. The tide had turned, and it felt like we had the momentum. And honestly, in the same way that we were saying between their goal and ours, it felt like an eternity. Between our first goal and our second, felt like no time at all, and yet it was like a full 20 minutes. I think what happened was it gave every single person the belief that if they went forward, we might be able to get that other goal. But the main difference maker to me was that second goal scorer coming on, Mo Ibrahim. Absolute phenom, 18 years old. He's electric. And it honestly, it baffles me he wasn't played from the beginning. because as soon as he came on, he was everywhere. And obviously he got that second goal as well. But he also created so much before that goal happened. So, yeah, for me, that was really kind of, other than the momentum and the fact, as I said, you know, the tide had turned. Mo Ibrahim was the difference maker there.
Yeah, for sure. And that was a goal, Will, like where ball after ball after ball at that point, after that first goal, was just being knocked around the box. There was header, rebound. The ball comes out to Mo, and Mo just completely scorches it directly into the ground, up off the ground, and into the far corner. It was outside of Bazzini's top 10 kick. Honestly, it was goal of the season for me. He is such an exciting young player, and I can't wait to see more from him. And I hope we get to see more from him in the coming, maybe next year, hopefully. But what at that time were you expecting? Were you expecting like we have to lock it down defensively, start bringing in some defensive players? Because a lot of big pro teams would say, fuck this, let's lock it down. Let's sit back. Let's just defend, because they're still coming forward. They still have quality players on the field. I think that Pfeiffer, in this one moment, and we've criticized him a lot on this podcast for his lack of substitution awareness. I guess I'll say, trying to put it nicely. But I think he got his substitutes spot on in this case. I think that he felt the tide turn. I think that the entire coaching staff, the team, the fans felt the tide turn after Mo scored after the first goal, and then Mo scored the one that put us up. I think that at that point, game was over, but we didn't want to take our foot off the pedal, just in case it wasn't over, right?
Yeah, I mean,
we didn't want to sit back and defend, and because that doesn't do much for you unless you're like fucking Jose Mourinho's fucking Chelsea, right?
The game was over once that Ibra goal went in. I mean, the guys didn't even think of slowing down, and they just banged in another one before the game was over. I mean, it felt pretty secure at that point.
I'm not going to take anything away from Labo's goal in the 90th, but like that sealed the deal and made us feel really good. But I was still I was still on pins and needles a little bit, because whether or not that happens, you're scoring goals and you think you're winning the game. Any weird shit can happen. It would happen to Vermont Green at that point.
Well, I'll tell you, the stands by us got a little emptier on the second goal, and by the time the third goal came around, it was just us over there. So, I think they knew how it was going. So, It was great. It was great.
Yeah. So before we move on, let's get a little bit. We can get a little bit serious. We don't have to talk about like getting too serious about this, but let's talk about fan engagement, because and the difference in. We don't have to talk about parenting skills or any of that shit, but let's talk about fan engagement and how fans, and it's an overarching thing. It's not just this game, how fans approach the game as football fans. And Tom has a little different perspective because he comes from the land of football. What is there a cultural difference? Is there something in American football versus and I'm not talking the NFL, but American football versus European football, where we're trying to be as European as we can? Are we trying to be Gooners? Are we trying to be, and I'm not talking capital Gooners, but are we trying to be goons out there as fans and trying to keep up with the culture of fandom in Europe? Or are we do we lose our heads sometimes as fans and go a little too far, take it a little too far?
I don't know. I've seen some pretty wild fan behavior in my time. I remember when I was 12 or 13, United lost against Liverpool in the League Cup, so it's not even an important one. You know what I mean? It was
Right.
the Carling,
Cup.
The Carling Cup at the time, and they let out the Liverpool fans too early, and there was brawls. I had to get through Sir Matt Busby Way with a bunch of Liverpool fans, and people were just kicking seven shades of shit out of each other. So obviously, it could be a lot worse. I feel a difference is in England, at least. I don't know. Maybe in lower league, they might not have an away section, but they're at least usually the stewards in the way. So people chat shit to each other, but there's not someone lobbing Coke cans at your head, generally speaking. But you know what I mean? In the Euros, just a few weeks ago, I was listening to my podcast, Guardian Football Weekly, and the journalists were talking about how when England beat the Netherlands, people were throwing pint glasses onto their laptops right afterwards. This is football. This is what happens, and I imagine these kids also they're bored. It's hot. They've been left unsupervised and given far too much sugar, and they've just learned a bunch of great new swear words from the latest Call of Duty, game or whatever, and they want to rile us up. I obviously do feel like they overstepped the line, and rape threats, however comical that is, coming from a 10-year-old child, is not on. Fairly sure I heard the N-word as well. Again, obviously not on.
Yep.
But yeah, I think when the initial shock of having a 10-year-old call me the C word wore off, I did find it actually kind of funny, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I was sitting here. It's like, this is football. This happens. It's tribalism to an certain extent, within parameters. I think they did cross the line with some hate speech. Again, they are kids. But I think that this is an error. Well, two things. One, when you start throwing things, then I do feel like you have crossed a line. Because one kid throws an empty Coke can and that's annoying. One kid throws a slushy cup and that's full. You're getting closer, but it's one hard object away from somebody getting cut. So I think that's worse. But the other problem that I have is you should just have some staff over there, because it would cut these issues off the past. I mean, what this was unsupervised kids on the other side of the stadium with no police, no staff members over there. And, they took it just a bit too far. Nobody was seriously injured, but I mean, hey, that's what football do to you.
Guess what? I think we can all attest to being little assholes at some point in our lives at that age, especially. I know I was. I didn't pull any stuff like that, but there wasn't a lot of hate speech, that kind of stuff. But I mean, in the end, yes, we look back at this, and I think we discussed this on the car ride home while I was missing turn after turn after turn.
Just two turns.
Just two. Okay, turns. Thank you. Just two turns. It cost us 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Always
that did happen.
That did happen. We missed the same turn that Tom and I missed last year. But I think that, like, you're right. It is tribalism, and I think football has a unique issue that and it goes from. And we see it because we get a little chirpy. We don't do the disrespect thing so much. We did pick on that guy's tattoo a couple weeks ago, but we don't get personal with them as fans, and we understand we are grown adults, But in the end, these were unsupervised kids, and I think like I said, we discussed it in the car, and we're gonna look back at this and kind of laugh about it. But football does have a problem with this kind of stuff: the racism, the anti-Semitism, the Homophobia is a big thing in football, especially in Spain and Italy. And England is no exception. But in the end, the best thing that we can do as fans who recognize this stuff is call it out and talk about it and keep talking about it, because it's the more that we talk about it and educate people about that kind of stuff and how it's not okay, the more that the more people are going to see that it's not okay, and the better that the game is going to get for fans. So with that, we have, because we won that game 3-1. We did get to talk to Patrick Inferna. Came up to Will and I at the end of the game and said, "You're not going to believe this shit." But Hudson Valley drew 5-5. We know that Tom had been watching the game, and it was 3-1 at one point.
It was 4-1 at one point.
4-1 at one point.
So whoever Motown were playing scored first. And so I got so excited, start running around telling people they'd scored. And then I look in my pocket and then it's 1-1. I'm like, okay, it's not the end of the world. And this team obviously is good enough to score the first goal. Maybe this is going to be like a knockdown fight. And then I look in my pocket and then it's 2-1. And then again, it's 3-1. And then after halftime, it's 4. And I was like, there's no point doing this anymore. Clearly, this is a rout. They obviously aren't actually very good, and they got lucky in the first 10 minutes to get that goal. And it turns out, actually, no, they are apparently a good team. And they pulled back a 4-goal deficit, I think.
Can you imagine not getting to go to the playoffs after just imploding?
Obviously, we
You're
don't know.
4-1 and you tie 5-5.
Obviously, we don't fucking know what happened, right? Because they could have been like, "Oh, we're up. We can pull players off the field. We can do this. We can do that. We can put our fucking 17-year-old striker who was playing for Hudson Valley High, in this past season. Who knows what happened, but they knew that they had to win, and they should have held on to that win."
Mike, as you're a Spurs fan, I think there can't be anything more Spursy than what happened, because not only did they blow a 4-goal lead, they also, the game before this was the day that we got rained out when we were against the Boston Bolts. And they were playing, sorry, it was Hudson Valley. I said Motown earlier on. Hudson Valley were playing up against. Motown played Hudson Valley in the last game. Again, if Hudson Valley won that game, I don't think they would even need to. No. I think they would have been safe with a draw. But they lost a 2-goal deficit against them in the last game, and then lost their. Went 5-1 up to 5-5. I mean, that is as Spursy as you get. I feel
that it's just the history of Hudson Valley. What can you say?
This is the history of the club. So yeah, I mean, it is, and around this club, there's some sort of weird mystique where we keep either getting lucky, or or something mysterious happens that allows us to either move on, or like the first season, Sam McCann scores the wonder goal with, in 100-degree heat down in Virginia when we're a man down, and we shouldn't have been a man down. I mean, like, crazy shit happens to this club, and as fans, are we a little bit like, I guess we're like those kids who get whatever they want for Christmas. They tell their parents what they want and they get it, right? We're privileged to have this happen to us, but at the same time, we have to sit back as fans and recognize that, like, this shit doesn't happen for other fans, right? For other fan bases. Like Hudson Valley, yeah, that's as Spursy as it fucking gets. That is Spursy as hell. That's Spursy as, playing West Ham, and some old man comes on and scores a goal against you to tie it up when Gareth Bale hits the fucking post a minute beforehand. It's just one of those things, and this club we always recognize on this podcast, especially, how lucky we are as fans to have the owners, the founders that we have, to have the players that we have, because these players are picked purposefully for this club. I think if we had players that were shithousers, that were scumbags, that it would be different. But we don't allow that in our club. And I think that these are purposefully chosen players, and they're easy to love, easy to like. And maybe other fan bases don't like us for it, but this stuff happens to us, and I think it happens for a reason, and I think it has a lot to do with the mission of this club. Not to sound cheesy, but it does. It does. I love our fan base, whether it be the kids who are coming from the football clubs, to the casual fan, to the folks in the south stands who just want to come down and scream and holler and have a fun time and just be kids for a little bit, just shout. I love our club, and that said, we got a playoff game out of this. So I know we're coming up on time, but let's talk about this team that we're going to play, because I thought that maybe coming out of the Mid-Atlantic Division, it might be a little bit of a pushover. They might not. Obviously, we have probably one of the toughest divisions outside of the Pacific in the league. Probably the toughest division at this point. I don't know what to expect from this team. This team has a lot of good social media. They do. I've looked it up. They do a lot of the same stuff that we do, social media wise. They do have fans at their games. Well, it's not like there are 3,000 people there, right? But they do have fans at their games. I don't think these guys are gonna come 11 hours on a bus to lay down for Vermont Green.
I will say they do have fans there, and they have a beautiful stadium that I've been to 100 times, because they play at my undergrad alma mater in Pennsylvania, which is a wild coincidence, because it's a tiny little college.
It's also their American football field, right?
Yeah, it is too.
Yeah.
And it's a nice field. I've like I've said, been on it a million times. Yeah.
I'm looking at this club, and I'm watching the 5-10 minutes of YouTube highlights I watch. It looks like this club does it right. They play high intensity football. They don't back down. They have a pretty strong defense. Their midfield is very good. What do you guys expect? Do you guys expect them to lay down for us? Do you expect them to come here and fight? Do you expect them to just come and not have the quality that it takes to beat a team like Vermont Green? I think personally that this is going to be our biggest fight of this season, because it means a lot to both of these clubs, and both of these clubs are have great missions and have they're trying to do it the right way.
Yeah, I had a look myself. Also, they are one of very old club as well. They've been around in one format or other since the early 1900s. It was a German immigrant club. I think they've been in the kind of form that they've been in since 1995 in terms of their name and kind of branding and whatnot. But they've got this really cool history. It seems like they are quite close with MLS clubs as well, so they do get players going there that are maybe a bit more decent than your average USL2 team. They seem to be fairly successful year on year as well. I mean, they've been going in this situation for about 30 years, so they've had a lot to build on.
Mm-hmm.
However, so the no mugs is what I'm trying to say here. I think on their day they will be able to beat us. I do feel the teams in our league are somewhat prepared to walk out onto Virtue Field with 2,500 people, 3,000 people there. You can see all the social media about Vermont Green. I think it's a very different thing when you, as a player who has never played in front of more than maybe 1,000 people for your university side, maybe, coming onto Virtue Field on a summer's day and hearing the crowd roar, and I think players react to it in one or two ways. Either they stand up and they react to it really positively and they play really well. Unfortunately, Seacoast does that as a team, or they completely capitulate. And I think that's what we saw with AC Connecticut this year. Although, in fact, no, I think that the real one that we probably saw this in was the first round of the US Open Cup, where there's a team that professional team, but they're still not getting the same numbers we are. And I think it was the reaction and of the presence of our crowd that pushed us over the line that day. And I think a lot of players see those numbers and they're not getting, no one's chanting for them, no one's supporting them.
Right.
And I think it's very easy to go missing in games like that if you're not prepared.
Yeah, and I think this is a game that we can win, but I do think this is a game we can lose. So, for example, in their division, they played 12 games over the course of the season. They scored 32 goals in 12 games. They also let 20 goals in over 12 games. So, it seems like they score a lot and then they get scored on a decent amount, because the other big club that we all know in their team is in their division is Ocean City Nor'easters, which
Right.
is historically one of the better clubs in the entire league. And they actually beat Ocean City this season. So, this is a club that can do damage to historically, big and successful teams. I do
They're very high risk,
high risk, high reward is what I'd say. So I do think that Tom's right. They could get a little too exposed with the crowd and try to do one and then, getting, beat a couple times. So I don't know. I'm optimistic because it's at home. It's the playoffs. It's our stadium, the way we want to play against a team that definitely has a leakier defense. I'm optimistic. I think we win this one.
Okay. I was asking for your goddamn prediction, but you gave it to me.
There it is.
There it
Also,
is.
Will's bold prediction of we could win or we could lose.
No one's ever actually given that prediction before, and I just came up with it. Yeah.
It was very John Madden of you.
It's a very, very lawyer's answer.
Uh,
Yeah, thank you very much, counselor. So we're coming up on time here, and nobody wants to. We lost Jimmy, unfortunately. His shitty laptop failed, and we'll get him back on at some point. Maybe we'll just keep bumping him like Kimmel does to Matt Damon all the time. That'll be a funny thing. But we are coming up on time, so I'm going to ask for final thoughts from you guys. But before I do that, I got to do a little bit of housekeeping. Got to rope in some of the folks that help to keep us running here. I'm going to talk about the Blazing Musket. Blazing Musket is an awesome soccer website. They focus on New England soccer. They have a couple of tiers, and you can do the paid tier or you can do the free tier. You're still going to get a lot of great content from the free tier, but I would suggest to you guys go out and do that paid tier because you get a lot more content. You get your content on your New England Revolution, the Hartford Athletic, sometimes from Wimp or Seaboats. You can get a little bit of content there. Rhode Island FC, who is the new darling club. They're fun to follow. They got a great fan base, but Blazing Musket follows all of them, and especially our very own beloved Vermont Green. We're lucky to have a really good reporter and some really good photographers that come. And Sam Minton, great reporter, and he does a great job. And just go out, support them if you can. They support us as a podcast. And you can find us on all of your favorite social media outlets, unless your drunk uncle likes to use Facebook. Nobody uses Facebook anymore, but you'll find us on Twitter. You'll find us on Instagram, and of course on YouTube. We live stream all of these, but just wanted to put that out there for everybody. Go into the Blazing Musket. They do great work. From there, we're going to go on to some final thoughts, and I'm going to start. Let's roll the dice. I'm going to start with Tom. Give us your final thoughts going into the game tomorrow night.
Is it in fact the biggest game we've had at Virtue so far? It very well could be. I also got word from Patrick today that if we win this, the next games on Friday or on Sunday, and if we win those, and these are big ifs here, the next game could be at Virtue. So we could be seeing a quarterfinal at Virtue if we get far enough. Which big ifs, big ifs.
Lots of ifs.
Lots of ifs.
There's some Lions bridges in there.
Yes, yeah, not going to be an easy. It's not an easy conference to get through. But I think we will win tomorrow. My bold prediction, and just can't wait to see the crowd turn out. Hope the weather stays good for us.
Tom's going to be out there yelling and up from his press box, high up in the crow's nest. So support Tom. If you're listening right now, turn around, give him the thumbs up as he's shouting out our team. So we're gonna go to Will next for his final thoughts.
I'm just super grateful that we get to have potentially maybe more, but a final home match of the season, if it will, and maybe we'll have more. But the fact that we don't have to walk away disappointed this season with no playoffs and missing our last home game of the season is great. And I'm so thrilled that the players were able to get us to that point. So I just can't wait for tomorrow. Quick turnaround for the boys, but I'm sure they're gonna be up for it. So yeah, up the green.
So my final thoughts are these. Our guy, he's been with us for 3 years, Daniel Pacella. Oh, captain, my captain. He was robbed of his final Virtue appearance. He's played for the University of Vermont. He's played for our Vermont Green. He stood by us here in the Green Mountains for years now. He was robbed of his final appearance, the Boston Bolts game, by the weather. He's not going to be robbed this time. He's going to get to go out there and have his final hurrah. And when he gets out there on the field, whether he's in the starting lineup, whether he comes on as a sub, whether he doesn't even make an appearance on the field, he will make an appearance on the field at the end of the game. Let's shout him out. Let's give him the due he deserves. But most of all, let's go out there and push our Vermont Green to a playoff win, a playoff play-in win, and get them to either New Jersey or Virginia, wherever they're going to go from there this coming weekend. And let's bring it back to Virtue. But that begins with all of you out there, whether you're listening to the podcast or watching us on YouTube. Just please get out there, support your Vermont Green, support all of your local companies, and just come out and scream tomorrow night, scream. And hopefully you get to listen to this before the game happens. I'm not going to make any predictions because my predictions are shit and they never work out for me. So until we see you guys again, up the green.
It's coming home.
It's coming home.